The bruise on Clara Zimmerman's cheek told a story that her trembling voice couldn't. The whispers followed her through Cottonwood Springs like shadows at dusk, cruel, persistent, impossible to outrun. It was 1875, and in this dusty corner of Arizona territory, a woman's pain was often dismissed as deserved punishment, especially when married to a man like Frank Holloway, whose money talked louder than her tears ever could. She must have provoked him, Eleanor Whitmore muttered behind her fan to the other ladies at church. Frank's got such a temper when he's crossed. Clara kept her eyes forward, clutching her prayer book tighter. 3 years of marriage had taught her that denial was easier than confrontation, that silence hurt less than speaking up. The 22-year-old had come west with dreams of adventure and independence, only to find herself trapped in a gilded cage that grew smaller with each passing day. The service ended and Clara slipped out quickly, avoiding the pitying glances and judgmental stares. She hurried down Main Street, her gaze fixed on the ground, when she collided with something solid, a man's chest. "My apologies, madam," came a deep voice, steady as bedrock. Clara looked up into eyes the color of summer storms. The stranger wore a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, a Stetson pulled low over his brow. Dust covered his boots, suggesting he'd ridden far. "No harm done," she murmured, stepping back. His gaze lingered on her cheek where makeup couldn't quite conceal the discoloration. Something flashed across his face, not pity, but something fiercer. "Name's Gabriel Turner," he said, tipping his hat. "Just rode into town." "Clara Holloway," she replied, then winced at using her married name. "I should be going. My husband expects me." Gabriel nodded, but his expression hardened slightly. "Be well, Mrs. Holloway." She hurried away, feeling his eyes on her back. Something about the stranger stirred emotions she'd long buried under layers of fear and resignation. Frank was waiting on their porch when she arrived, his expression darkening at her tardiness. "Where have you been?" he demanded, fingers already curling into familiar fists. "Church ran long," Clara lied, her heart hammering. "I came straight home." Frank's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "I saw you talking to some drifter, making a spectacle of yourself." "It was nothing," she whispered. "I accidentally bumped into him." "You embarrass me," Frank hissed, dragging her inside. The door slammed shut behind them, muffling the sounds that followed. Gabriel Turner had seen enough in his 30 years to recognize the signs. As he secured lodging at the town's only hotel, he couldn't shake the image of Clara Holloway's bruised face from his mind. The fear in her eyes was all too familiar. "That'll be 50 cents a night," the hotel clerk said, sliding a key across the counter. "Planning to stay long? Not sure yet," Gabriel replied, pocketing the key. "What can you tell me about Frank Holloway?" The clerk's eyebrows shot up. "Bank owner, richest man in the county. Why?" "Just getting acquainted with the town." "Well, Mr. Holloway's not one to cross, has the mayor and sheriff in his pocket." The clerk leaned forward. "Though between us, there are whispers about how he treats that pretty young wife of his." Gabriel nodded, his jaw tightening. "And nobody does anything about these whispers," the clerk shrugged. "Ain't our business what happens between a man and his wife. Besides, they say she provokes him, got a sharp tongue when she forgets her place." Gabriel laid another coin on the counter, heavier than necessary. "No woman deserves a hand that hurts," he said quietly. "No matter what anyone says." The clerk pocketed the money with an uncomfortable laugh. "You're new here, Mr. Turner. Best not to stir up trouble." But trouble had a way of finding Gabriel Turner, or perhaps it was the other way around. The Cottonwood Springs saloon buzzed with activity that evening. Gabriel sat in a corner, nursing a whiskey, observing. He'd learned to read a town like others read books, noting alliances, tensions, the unspoken hierarchies. The batwing doors swung open and a well-dressed man entered, flanked by 2 others. The room shifted subtly, conversations quieted, postures straightened. Frank Holloway had arrived. Gabriel watched as Holloway claimed the best table, ordering drinks with an imperious wave. The man carried himself with the confidence of someone unused to hearing no. "Another whiskey," The bartender appeared at Gabriel's table. "Who are the men with Holloway?" Gabriel asked instead. "Left is Jacob Mills, his business partner. Right is Sheriff Dawson." The bartender lowered his voice. "Word is you've been asking about Holloway. That's not healthy curiosity in these parts." Gabriel smiled thinly. "Just getting the lay of the land." "Well, here's some free advice. Holloway's land isn't for exploring." The bartender moved away as Holloway's booming laugh echoed through the saloon. Gabriel finished his drink, left payment, and was heading for the door when Holloway's voice cut through the din. "You there, stranger. I hear you've been asking questions about me." The room fell silent. Gabriel turned slowly, just making conversation. Frank Holloway's eyes were cold despite his smile. "You also had a conversation with my wife today. Care to explain?" "Nothing to explain. The lady bumped into me. I steadied her. We exchanged pleasantries." Holloway's smile didn't reach his eyes. "My wife doesn't need steadying from drifters." "No," Gabriel agreed evenly. "Seems like what she needs is protection from someone closer to home." The silence in the room became oppressive. Sheriff Dawson's hand moved to his gun. Holloway's face flushed. "You're implying something dangerous, stranger." "Not implying anything. Just observing that your wife carries marks that didn't come from bumping into me." Gabriel's hand remained relaxed, though not far from his own holster. "You'd best move on, Mr. Turner, Gabriel Turner, and I'm not quite ready to move on yet." He tipped his hat and walked out, feeling the heat of Holloway's glare between his shoulder blades. Outside, the cool night air cleared his head. Gabriel hadn't planned to get involved in local matters. After the war and years of drifting, he'd learned that other people's troubles were best left alone. But something about Clara Holloway's quiet dignity in the face of such obvious cruelty had struck a chord. He made his way back to the hotel, plans already forming. Tomorrow, he'd learn more about Frank Holloway, his routines, his weaknesses, his hold over this town. And perhaps, if chance allowed, he'd find a way to speak with Clara again. Dawn broke clear and cold over Cottonwood Springs. Gabriel was already awake, having slept lightly as was his habit. He dressed, checked his revolver, and headed downstairs. The dining room was empty save for an older woman scrubbing tables. "Coffee," she offered, "please, and whatever food you're serving." She nodded, disappearing into the kitchen. Gabriel took a seat by the window, watching Main Street come to life. The bank, Holloway's Bank, stood prominently at the crossroads, its fresh paint and glass windows a stark contrast to the weathered buildings surrounding it. The woman returned with coffee and a plate of eggs and bacon. "You're the one who stood up to Frank Holloway last night," she said. Not a question. Gabriel sipped his coffee. "News travels fast. Small town." She hesitated. "They say you mentioned his wife." "I mentioned that she had bruises someone should answer for." The woman glanced around, though they were alone. "Clara teaches at the schoolhouse 3 days a week. Frank allows it because it makes him look generous, supporting education and all. Today's one of her days." Gabriel studied the woman. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because 20 years ago I was Clara, different man, same fists." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing an old, poorly healed break in her forearm. "He died in a mining accident, best day of my life." She rolled her sleeve down. "Sometimes God's too slow with justice. Sometimes justice needs a helping hand." She walked away before Gabriel could respond, leaving him with his thoughts and a valuable piece of information. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple one-room building with a small bell tower. Gabriel approached casually, timing his arrival for when lessons would be ending. He waited across the street, leaning against a hitching post as if resting his horse. Children spilled from the building at noon, their laughter a stark contrast to the solemnity of the woman who followed them out. Clara Holloway wore a high-necked blue dress, her hair pulled back in a simple chignon. Even from a distance, Gabriel could see she'd applied more makeup to her cheek. She noticed him almost immediately, her posture stiffening. After the last child had departed, she approached, wariness in every step. "Mr. Turner," she said formally, "if my husband learns you're speaking to me again, I'll be brief." Gabriel promised. I saw what others pretend not to see. I heard what they say that you somehow deserve it. Color drained from Clara's face. You don't understand our situation. I understand enough. No woman deserves a hand that hurts, Mrs. Holloway, not for any reason. She looked away, blinking rapidly. What would you have me do? Frank owns half this town. There's nowhere I could go that he wouldn't find me. There are always options. Like what? Divorce, abandonment. Her laugh was bitter. I'd be destitute and disgraced, and Frank would never allow it anyway. Gabriel stepped closer. What if there was another way? What if you could be free of him? Clara's eyes widened with alarm. Are you suggesting? I'm suggesting nothing, Gabriel said quickly. Just asking if you've considered all possibilities. Mr. Turner, whatever you're thinking, stop. You don't know Frank. He's dangerous when crossed. She glanced over her shoulder nervously. I need to go. His banking partner's wife is hosting a luncheon and I'm already late. Will you be safe tonight? Her smile was sad. I'm never safe, Mr. Turner, but thank you for your concern. Gabriel watched her walk away, his resolve hardening. Clara Holloway had resigned herself to a life of fear and pain. Sometimes people needed saving from their own acceptance of cruelty. The rest of the day passed slowly. Gabriel reconnoitered the town, noting patrol patterns of Holloway's pet sheriff, identifying allies and obstacles. By evening, he had the beginnings of a plan not fully formed, but the outlines of something workable. He was returning to the hotel when a commotion from the direction of the Holloway residence caught his attention. A woman's scream, quickly silenced, then the crash of breaking glass. Gabriel's hand went to his gun as he changed direction, moving swiftly through darkening streets. The Holloway house was the grandest in town, a two-story Victorian with a wraparound porch. Light spilled from the windows, and through one, Gabriel could see shadows moving violently. He approached cautiously, drawing his revolver as he mounted the porch steps. Another crash sounded from inside, followed by a man's roar of anger. Gabriel tried the front door locked. Moving to the window, he peered inside to see Frank Holloway standing over Clara, who had collapsed against an overturned table. You embarrass me in front of everyone, Holloway was shouting. Contradicting me about the railroad investment, who do you think you are? Gabriel didn't hesitate. He smashed the window with his gun butt and vaulted through the opening as Clara screamed again. Holloway whirled, his face contorted with rage and surprise. What the hell was all he managed before Gabriel's fist connected with his jaw, sending him staggering backward. Run, Gabriel told Clara, keeping his eyes on Holloway. She scrambled to her feet, her lip bleeding. He'll kill you. Not today, he won't. Gabriel's tone left no room for argument. Go now. Clara hesitated only a moment before fleeing through the front door, which Holloway had evidently unlocked when returning home. Holloway recovered his balance, spitting blood. You're dead, Turner. Breaking into my home, assaulting me, after what I witnessed, I'd say I interrupted a crime in progress, Gabriel replied coldly. Now, we're going to have a conversation about how you treat your wife. Holloway lunged for a desk drawer, but Gabriel was faster, crossing the room in 2 strides and slamming the man against the wall. The banker might have had wealth and influence, but Gabriel had spent years surviving by his wits and strength. It was no contest. Listen carefully, Gabriel growled, pressing his forearm against Holloway's throat. You're going to give Clara a divorce. You're going to provide her with enough money to start a new life elsewhere, and you're going to do it without complaint or pursuit. Holloway's face purpled. I'll see you hanged, Gabriel increased the pressure. Before that happens, I'll make sure everyone from here to Tucson knows how the great Frank Holloway beats women. How's that for your banking reputation? Think the territorial governor will still come to your dinner parties? Fear flickered in Holloway's eyes, quickly replaced by calculation. What's your stake in this, Turner? You sweet on my wife. She's not worth the trouble. Gabriel's fist connected with Holloway's stomach, driving the air from his lungs. Your wife is worth 10 of you, he said as Holloway gasped for breath. And my stake is simple: I don't abide men who hurt women, so here's how it's going to be. Gabriel laid out his terms in detail, keeping Holloway pinned. When he finished, he released the banker, who slumped against the wall. "You've made a dangerous enemy," Holloway wheezed. "Better me than your wife," Gabriel replied, backing toward the broken window. "I'll expect those divorce papers to be ready by noon tomorrow. Don't make me come looking for them." He slipped out the way he'd come in, knowing he had minutes at most before Holloway rallied his forces. The sheriff would be looking for him soon. Gabriel needed to find Clara and get them both to safety. She hadn't gone far. Gabriel found her huddled behind the livery stable, shaking with cold and fear. "Are you hurt badly?" he asked, approaching slowly to avoid frightening her further. Clara touched her split lip. "I've had worse," she admitted. "What did you do to Frank?" "Convinced him to reconsider your marriage arrangement." Gabriel offered his hand. "But we need to move. The sheriff won't be far behind." She stared at his outstretched hand. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Gabriel said simply. "I know you deserve better." Clara took his hand, her decision made. "Where can we go? Frank has allies everywhere." "I have a friend who runs a trading post about 20 miles north. We can shelter there until things cool down." They moved quickly through the shadows to the hotel, where Gabriel collected his few belongings. Then to the livery, where the sleepy stable boy barely questioned Gabriel's request for his horse and the rental of a second mount. As they rode out of town under cover of darkness, Clara looked back at the life she was leaving, a prison of luxury and pain, of status and terror. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. "I still don't understand why you'd risk everything for a stranger," she said as Cottonwood Springs faded behind them. Gabriel was quiet for a moment. "My sister died at her husband's hands," he finally said. "I was away fighting, couldn't protect her. When I came home and learned what happened, what people had ignored, I swore no woman would suffer that fate if I could help it." The night wrapped around them, stars offering just enough light to follow the trail. They rode in silence for a while, each absorbed in their own thoughts. "What will happen tomorrow?" Clara finally asked. "If Holloway's smart, he'll prepare divorce papers granting you a settlement. If he's not, I'll need to be more persuasive." Gabriel's tone suggested he was prepared for either outcome. "And after that, what becomes of me?" Gabriel glanced at her. In the moonlight, despite the bruises and fear, Clara Zimmerman Holloway looked like a woman awakening from a long nightmare. "That's for you to decide. You'll have means and freedom. The world opens up when you're no longer afraid." The trading post appeared just before dawn, a sprawling adobe structure with several outbuildings. A lantern already burned in the window as they approached. "Griffin knows we're coming," Gabriel explained. "He has eyes everywhere." The door opened before they dismounted, revealing a broad-shouldered man with a magnificent beard streaked with gray. Griffin MacDonald had been an Army scout before establishing his trading post at this crucial crossroads between settlements. "Took you long enough," he called gruffly, but his eyes were kind as they assessed Clara's condition. "Madam, there's hot food and a safe bed waiting. No one will find you here unless I want them to." Clara dismounted gingerly, her body stiff from the long ride and her husband's abuse. "Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. Griffin to my friends," he replied, ushering them inside. "And any friend of Gabe's is a friend of mine." The trading post's interior was surprisingly comfortable, a large main room with a stone fireplace, shelves stocked with goods, and doorways leading to private quarters. A Native American woman was stirring something that smelled delicious over the fire. "This is Naeli," Griffin introduced. "Best cook in the territory and my wife of 15 years. Naeli's dark eyes took in Clara's injuries without comment. She simply nodded toward a door. "I've prepared a bath. Your clothes will be washed while you soak." Clara nearly wept at the kindness. "I don't know how to thank you all." "No thanks needed," Gabriel said gently. "Rest. We'll figure out next steps when you're ready." As Clara followed Naeli, Griffin pulled Gabriel aside. "Holloway's put a bounty on your head," he said without preamble. $500. Sheriff's already organized a posse. Gabriel nodded, unsurprised. They know I headed north. Not yet. I've got Naomi's brother watching the trails. He'll send word if they get close. Griffin poured 2 fingers of whiskey and handed one to Gabriel. This woman must be special for you to risk this much. Gabriel glanced toward the door where Clara had disappeared. She deserved better than what life gave her. Griffin studied his old friend. Just like all the others you've helped, this one's different, Gabriel admitted, surprising himself with the truth of it. Griffin raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Get some rest. I'll keep watch. The next few days established a routine. Clara slept late that first morning, exhaustion and emotional release claiming her. When she emerged, wearing a simple dress Naomi had provided, the change was already visible. Without fear shadowing her face, her natural beauty shone through high cheekbones, expressive brown eyes, a quiet dignity in her bearing. Gabriel caught himself watching her too often as she helped around the trading post, chatting with Naomi or reading from Griffin's surprisingly extensive library. Her laughter, when it came, transformed her entirely. On the 3rd day, Griffin's scout returned with news. The sheriff's posse had given up the search, but Frank Holloway had hired professional trackers from Tucson. More concerning, he'd refused to prepare divorce papers, instead filing charges of kidnapping and theft against Gabriel. Theft? Clara asked when they gathered to discuss the report. You, Gabriel explained grimly. In the eyes of the law, you're still his property. Her face hardened. Then we need to change that. Gabriel admired her resolve. I was thinking the same. We need to return to Cottonwood Springs. That's suicide, Griffin protested. Not if we do it right, Gabriel countered. Holloway wants this handled quietly to protect his reputation. We'll use that against him. Clara leaned forward. I have letters, she said softly. Things Frank wrote to business partners about certain arrangements. Investments that wouldn't withstand scrutiny. I took them before we fled. Gabriel and Griffin exchanged surprised looks. Where are they? Gabriel asked. Sewn into the hem of my dress, the one I was wearing when we left. I've been keeping records for years, just in case. She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. That changes things, Gabriel said, a plan forming. With leverage like that, we might not need to go back at all. They crafted a careful message to Frank Holloway, hinting at the documents Clara possessed and suggesting a mutually beneficial arrangement. Signed divorce papers and a generous settlement in exchange for Clara's silence regarding his business dealings. Griffin's Paiute scout, Swift Arrow, delivered the message. 2 tense days passed before he returned with Holloway's response not written, but in the form of increased bounties on both Gabriel and Clara's heads. He's scared, Gabriel observed. He knows those papers could ruin him. Or he's calling our bluff, Griffin countered. Do you really have enough evidence to damage him, Clara? She nodded confidently. Enough to send him to territorial prison. Frank was careless around me, thought I was too simple to understand what I was transcribing. A small, fierce smile curved her lips. He underestimated me. Gabriel felt a surge of admiration. Clara had been planning her escape longer than anyone realized, gathering ammunition while enduring abuse. Then we force his hand, Gabriel decided, but not by returning to Cottonwood Springs. We go to Prescott instead. The territorial capital, Clara said, understanding immediately. The governor's office, exactly. Frank has influence in Cottonwood Springs, but the territorial governor won't protect a banker implicated in fraud, especially not one with a reputation for beating his wife. The journey to Prescott would be dangerous. Holloway's hired guns would be watching the obvious routes. They would need to travel by night, taking little-known trails through difficult terrain. They departed the following evening, Griffin providing fresh horses and supplies. Naomi embraced Clara warmly. You are stronger than you know, she whispered. Trust that strength. The first 2 days of travel passed without incident. Gabriel led them through ravines and hidden passes, avoiding main trails. Clara proved to be a capable rider, never complaining despite the difficult conditions. Each night they made camp in concealed locations, keeping their fire small. On the third night, as they sat close to the embers, Clara asked, "What will you do after this is settled?" Gabriel had been asking himself the same question. For years, he'd drifted from town to town, never staying long, haunted by his sister's fate and driven to prevent similar tragedies. But something had shifted inside him since meeting Clara. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "I've been moving for so long, I'm not certain I remember how to stay in one place." Clara studied the fire. "I used to dream of traveling," she said softly, "before I married Frank. I wanted to see California, the Pacific Ocean, maybe even back east to New York or Boston." "You'll have that chance soon," Gabriel assured her. "Once you're legally free with your settlement, you can go anywhere." She looked up at him, something unspoken in her gaze. "Would you? Could you see yourself traveling that direction too?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Gabriel felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. Before he could answer, a twig snapped in the darkness beyond their camp. Gabriel extinguished the fire with a swift kick of dirt, drawing his revolver in the same motion. "Get down," he whispered to Clara, who immediately pressed herself to the ground, silence stretched, broken only by the soft calls of night birds. Then the unmistakable metallic click of a hammer being cocked. "That's far enough," Gabriel called into the darkness. "Show yourself. Drop your weapon, Turner." The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "Mr. Holloway wants his wife back, and he's paying extra for your head." Gabriel calculated angles in the darkness, locating the voice. "How many with you?" he asked, stalling as he slowly positioned himself between the threat and Clara. A dark chuckle answered him. "Enough, you're outgunned." "Maybe," Gabriel conceded, "but the first bullet's got your name on it." A tense silence followed. Gabriel could feel Clara's fear like a physical presence behind him, but also her determination. She hadn't come this far to be dragged back. "Last chance, Turner. The woman doesn't have to get hurt." Gabriel's finger tightened on the trigger. "Neither do you. Walk away. Whatever Holloway's paying, it's not worth dying for." The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Then, unexpectedly, Clara's voice cut through the darkness. "I have documents proving Frank Holloway's criminal activities," she called clearly. "If anything happens to us, copies go to the territorial governor and every newspaper from here to San Francisco." Another silence, this one contemplative. "You're bluffing," the voice finally replied, but with less certainty. "My husband beat me for 3 years, Clara responded, steel in her tone. "Do you think I didn't plan my escape carefully? Do you think I'd risk my life without insurance?" Movement rustled in the brush. Gabriel tensed, ready to fire. "Hold your fire," a different voice commanded. "Let me think." The bounty hunters conferred in whispers too low to make out. Finally, the second voice called, "We'll give you until dawn. After that, all bets are off." Footsteps retreated, leaving Gabriel and Clara alone in the dark, both too alert to sleep. They broke camp immediately, pushing on through the night despite their exhaustion. By dawn, they'd gained significant ground, but Gabriel knew the hunters wouldn't be far behind. "We need to reach Prescott by tomorrow," he said as they allowed their horses a brief rest. "The bounty hunters will have sent word to Holloway. He'll know our plan now." Clara nodded grimly, her face pale with fatigue but determined. "Then we don't stop again until we reach the governor's office." They pushed harder that day, eating in the saddle, crossing difficult terrain that would slow their pursuers. By nightfall, Gabriel estimated they were within a few hours of Prescott, but their horses were spent, and Clara was swaying with exhaustion. "We rest here," he decided, finding a defensible position among large boulders. 4 hours, then we make our final push." As they settled in for their brief rest, Clara moved closer to Gabriel than she had on previous nights. "You never answered my question," she said softly. "About where you might go after this." Gabriel turned to face her in the darkness. Even exhausted and afraid, there was something luminous about Clara, a resilience that shone through. "I've been thinking about California," he he said carefully. "I hear the ocean is something to behold." Her smile was small but genuine. "I hear the same." Without thinking, Gabriel reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Clara didn't flinch at his touch the first time, he realized. He'd seen her accept contact without fear. "Clara," he began, unsure what he wanted to say, only knowing that something important was taking shape between them. She placed her fingers gently on his lips. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Tell me tomorrow when we're free." Gabriel nodded, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. They settled side by side, not quite touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth, and fell into an exhausted sleep. Dawn found them already riding toward Prescott, the town's buildings visible in the distance. They pushed their tired horses to a final effort, reaching the outskirts as the town was coming to life. The territorial governor's office was a substantial stone building in the center of town. As they approached, Gabriel scanned for signs of trouble, noting several men who didn't fit the usual pattern of early morning businessmen whose eyes tracked them too carefully, whose hands rested too close to hidden weapons. "Holloway's men," he murmured to Clara. "They got here first." Clara straightened in her saddle. "Then we don't waste time." They dismounted directly in front of the governor's office, ignoring the stares of passers-by at their trail-worn appearance. Gabriel kept one hand near his gun as they climbed the steps, acutely aware of the men closing in from various positions. Inside, a startled clerk looked up from his desk. "The governor isn't receiving visitors yet. This is an emergency," Clara interrupted, her voice carrying the authority of a woman who had found her strength. "I need to see Governor Safford immediately regarding criminal activities in Cottonwood Springs." The clerk blinked at her directness. "Your name, madam?" Clara Holloway, soon to be Zimmerman again. "I have evidence of banking fraud and other crimes committed by my husband, Frank Holloway." At the mention of Holloway's name, the clerk's demeanor changed. "One moment, please." He disappeared through a door, returning moments later. "The governor will see you. Both of you," he added with a nod to Gabriel. As they followed the clerk, Gabriel glanced back to see Holloway's men lingering outside, unwilling to create a disturbance at the governor's office but clearly not abandoning their pursuit. Governor Anson P.K. Safford was a compact man with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He rose as Clara and Gabriel entered his office. "Mrs. Holloway," he greeted her. "I'm acquainted with your husband. What brings you to my office in such urgent circumstances?" Clara withdrew the papers from her dress hem, unfolding them carefully. "Evidence, Governor, of my husband's fraudulent banking practices, bribery of officials, and manipulation of land deals." The governor accepted the documents, his expression growing progressively darker as he scanned them. "These are serious allegations," he finally said. "They're not allegations," Clara replied firmly. "They're facts in Frank's own handwriting, and I can testify to their authenticity." "I see." The governor set the papers down. "And what do you want in exchange for these documents, Mrs. Holloway?" "Justice," she said simply. "And my freedom. I want a divorce, protection from my husband, and the return of my family property that he acquired through our marriage." The governor's eyes moved to Gabriel. "And you, sir, what's your stake in this matter?" "I helped Mrs. Holloway escape an abusive situation," Gabriel replied. "Mr. Holloway has placed bounties on both our heads. His men are outside your office now." This news clearly displeased the governor. "Indeed." He moved to the window, confirming Gabriel's claim with his own eyes. A frown deepened the lines of his face as he returned to his desk and pulled a cord to summon an aide. "Have Captain Wilson bring a squad of territorial militia immediately," he ordered when the aide appeared. "There are armed men surrounding my office who need to be questioned." As the aide hurried off, the governor turned back to Clara and Gabriel. "It seems I need to send a clear message about the rule of law in this territory. Mrs. Holloway, you'll have your divorce. I'll see to it personally that a fair settlement is arranged, including the return of your property." Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly, the first burden lifting. As for Mr. Holloway, the governor continued, these documents suggest crimes that cannot be ignored. I'll be dispatching investigators to Cottonwood Springs immediately. The sound of boots on the wooden floor outside announced the arrival of the militia. The governor nodded with satisfaction. You'll both be under the territory's protection until this matter is resolved. Captain Wilson will escort you to secure accommodations. As they left the governor's office, Gabriel saw Holloway's men being disarmed and questioned by the militia. The immediate danger had passed, though he knew the fight wasn't entirely over. They were escorted to a small but comfortable house on a quiet street, guarded by militiamen. For the first time in days, they could truly rest. Clara slept for nearly 12 hours straight, while Gabriel kept watch despite assurances of their safety. When Clara finally emerged from the bedroom, there was a new lightness in her movements. She found Gabriel on the small porch cleaning his revolver. "It's really happening, isn't it?" she asked, sitting beside him. "I'm going to be free," Gabriel nodded, setting his gun aside. "The governor's a man of his word. By this time next week, you'll be Clara Zimmerman again, with the means to go wherever you choose." Clara was quiet for a moment, watching the street where children played unconcerned with adult troubles. "You never finished answering my question," she finally said, "about California." Gabriel turned to face her, seeing hope and vulnerability mingled in her expression. "I've been thinking I might head that way," he said carefully. "The ocean, like you mentioned, never seen it myself." "It's a long journey," Clara observed, "probably safer with a traveling companion." "Probably," Gabriel agreed, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Clara took a deep breath. "I know we've only known each other a short time, but these past days have shown me more about you than years might have in ordinary circumstances." Gabriel nodded, understanding completely. "Crisis revealed character in ways peaceful times never could. I'm not asking for promises," Clara continued, "just possibility. A chance to see if what I feel growing between us might flourish in freedom." Gabriel reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "I'd like that chance, Clara." "Very much." Her smile illuminated her entire face, the last shadows of fear finally banished. Gabriel leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Clara met him halfway, their lips touching in a gentle first kiss that held the promise of many more to come. The subsequent days passed in a whirlwind of legal proceedings. True to his word, Governor Safford expedited Clara's divorce, assigning a judge who was immune to Frank Holloway's influence. Frank himself was placed under house arrest in Cottonwood Springs as investigators examined the bank's records. A week after their arrival in Prescott, Clara stood before the judge as he signed the final decree. "You are legally Clara Zimmerman once again," he announced. "And the owner of your family's ranch outside Cottonwood Springs, plus a monetary settlement of $5,000. Clara hardly heard the gasps from spectators at the generous settlement. She was too focused on the sensation of chains falling away, of reclaiming not just her name but her very self. Gabriel waited outside the courtroom, hat in hand. When Clara emerged, legal papers clutched to her chest, their eyes met across the busy hallway. In that moment, something silent but profound passed between them: understanding, respect, and the beginnings of love. That evening they sat together on the porch of the house that had become their temporary sanctuary, planning their future. "The ranch needs work," Clara said. "It's been neglected since Frank forced my parents to sell it to him." "I'm good with my hands," Gabriel offered. "Could help get it back in shape before we head to California." Clara smiled at his casual use of "we." "I'd like that." "A few months to put things in order, save what we can from the settlement, then head west when the weather's good." Gabriel nodded, imagining it. After years of drifting, the idea of putting down even temporary roots felt strange but welcome. "Your parents passed away 2 years ago. Influenza." Sadness flickered across Clara's face. "They never forgave themselves for leaving me with Frank. They didn't know what he was really like until it was too late." Gabriel squeezed her hand gently. They'd be proud of you now, standing up for yourself, reclaiming your heritage. The next morning brought unexpected news. A telegram arrived from Cottonwood Springs. Frank Holloway had fled, evading his house arrest and disappearing with what funds he could gather. The governor's investigators believed he was heading for Mexico. Clara received the news with surprising equanimity. "He's gone," she said simply. "That's what matters." Gabriel wasn't so certain. Men like Holloway didn't surrender easily, and his pride had been severely wounded. But he kept his concerns to himself, not wanting to darken Clara's newfound happiness. They departed Prescott 3 days later, accompanied by 2 territorial militiamen as far as Cottonwood Springs. The town looked different to Clara, now less intimidating, more like the small, dusty settlement it actually was. Former friends who had turned blind eyes to her suffering now avoided her gaze. The ranch lay 5 miles outside town, a modest spread with a small house, barn, and corral. As they approached, Clara's eyes filled with tears. "It's been so long," she whispered. "I never thought I'd see it again." The place needed work. Fences sagged, the barn roof leaked, the house had stood empty too long. But the land was good, with a year-round stream and fertile soil. With effort, it would thrive again. They set to work immediately, Clara overseeing the house repairs while Gabriel tackled the barn and fences. They hired 2 local boys to help with the heavier labor, and slowly the ranch came back to life. Weeks passed, then months. Spring bloomed across the high desert, bringing wildflowers and new growth. Gabriel and Clara's relationship deepened with each passing day, built on mutual respect and growing affection. They shared meals, stories, dreams, and eventually, a bed Clara's choice, made without fear or pressure. The first time they made love was a revelation for both. For Clara, that intimacy could be gentle and giving. For Gabriel, that commitment brought a peace he'd never known in his years of wandering. "I love you," he told her afterward, the words coming easily now. "I think I have since that first day when you looked at me with such courage despite everything." Clara traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "I love you too. You saw me when no one else would look." By midsummer, the ranch was flourishing. They'd added cattle, planted crops, repaired buildings. Their plans for California remained, but had expanded to include periodic returns to the ranch, which they now thought of as home base. The day Gabriel proposed was ordinary in every way except the question itself. They were mending a fence together, working side by side as had become their custom when he simply asked, "Will you marry me, Clara?" She looked up, surprised not by the question but its timing. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, I will." They married in Prescott that autumn, with Governor Safford himself attending the small ceremony. Clara wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, and Gabriel wore the first new suit he'd owned in years. Their vows were personal and heartfelt, promising respect as well as love, freedom as well as commitment. "No hand that hurts," Gabriel promised, repeating the words that had first drawn them together. "Only hands that help hold and cherish." "No fear, only trust," Clara responded. "No captivity, only freedom shared." They returned to the ranch as husband and wife, planning to stay through winter before beginning their journey to California in spring. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work during the day, quiet evenings by the fire, nights of tender intimacy. The telegram arrived on a crisp November morning. Clara accepted it from the delivery boy, her expression changing as she read the brief message. "Frank's dead," she said, handing the paper to Gabriel. "Shot in a gambling dispute in Mexico City." Gabriel read the telegram, confirming the news. "How do you feel?" Clara considered the question seriously. "Relieved," she finally answered. "Not happy, but at peace. The last shadow is gone." That night they sat on their porch, watching stars appear in the vast Arizona sky. Clara's head rested on Gabriel's shoulder, their hands intertwined. "What do you think about staying?" she asked suddenly. "Not forever, but longer than spring, building something here before we see the ocean." Gabriel considered the question. The ranch had become more than a temporary stop, it had become a place of healing for both of them. "I'd like that," he decided. "We've got time, the ocean's waited this long, it can wait a bit longer." Clara smiled, contentment radiating from her. "I never thought I could be this happy," she confessed. "When I was with Frank, I couldn't imagine a future beyond survival." "You survived," Gabriel said, kissing her temple. "And now you're thriving, we both are." 2 years later, Clara gave birth to their daughter, whom they named Hope, a testament to what had saved them both. By then, the ranch had expanded, becoming one of the most prosperous in the area. Gabriel had discovered a talent for breeding horses, while Clara managed their growing cattle operation with keen business sense. They did eventually see the Pacific, taking 6-month-old Hope on her first journey to witness the endless blue horizon. Standing on the California shore, waves lapping at their feet, Gabriel wrapped his arms around his family and knew he'd found what he'd been searching for since the war, not just purpose, but home. And when people in Cottonwood Springs spoke of them, as people in small towns inevitably do, the story was always told the same way. How they said she provoked his anger, and the cowboy said no woman deserves a hand that hurts. How that simple truth had changed everything, had given a battered woman courage, had given a drifting man roots, had created a love that healed old wounds and built something beautiful in their place. In the years that followed, Clara and Gabriel Turner opened their ranch to other women seeking escape from violent situations, offering temporary sanctuary and the means to start fresh. Their home became known as a place of healing, their story a beacon of hope in a harsh territory where justice didn't always prevail. And on quiet evenings when the work was done and their children played in the yard, for Hope eventually gained 2 brothers, Gabriel would sometimes find Clara gazing at the distant mountains with a peaceful smile. "What are you thinking?" he would ask. And Clara would turn to him, eyes bright with contentment, and answer, "That love isn't just about grand gestures or pretty words. Sometimes it's about standing up and saying what's right when everyone else stays silent. That's how you saved me. That's how we saved each other."